Today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, we go over the differences between the Epiphone Les Paul Standard 50s and the Epiphone Les Paul Standard 60s. And spoiler alert, it's more differences between them than the Gibson versions. Now, if it seems like I'm smiling for no reason, it's not. This video here goes over the differences between two Epiphone guitars, so I don't have to worry about absolutely upsetting and ruining certain people's days because it's Epiphone and a different guitar company. Because people just are b****s. But either way, like I said at the beginning of the video, there's more differences in these two guitars than there are in the two Gibsons. The Les Paul Standard 50s and Les Paul Standard 60s. And to be honest, although it would be like on a technicality here, there's more differences in the Epiphones than, like, say, a 1958 and a 1960 Les Paul Standard from the custom shop. Now, on a technicality, you'd be looking at, like, the 50s and then the 60s as being, like, you know what I mean, like, 56 or 54 or 52, 54, like there's a lot more differences when it comes to that. But those are absolutely different models, so whatever. Maybe I'll do a video on it. I don't know, we'll see. But today we're going to talk about the differences between the Standard 50s and the Standard 60s. There's going to be a lot of similarities in these two models as well, but there's definitely some differences. So let's start out. Both of these guitars here are Chinese made. There's not one of these that snuck over to the US and said make me or anything like that. Both of these have gloss polyurethane finishes. Polyurethane is a polymer. It is not a plastic. Plastic is a polymer. Polyurethane is a polymer. Polyurethane is used as a plastic substitute at some points, but just like, you know, juice is a liquid and water is a liquid, water is not a juice. I'm still getting over being sick. I have no idea if that makes any sense. Both guitars here have slab mahogany bodies with carved maple tops. Both of these guitars here also have veneers. So if you look here at the flameage and stuff like that on the front, those are veneers. So it's like a thin piece of paper they roll over and I believe they glue it on top and then they finish over it. It's actually to hide the quality and such of what the actual maple looks like underneath. And on the back, this looks really nice as well, doesn't it? Like if I kind of move it around, a lot of figuring in there. Those are veneers as well on the back. So with both of these guitars, they use veneers on the back to actually hide what the wood looks like and to actually hide the amount of wood that's being used, like glued together before they cut out the guitar shapes. So from what I can actually see on looking at the bottom, the Standard 50s that I have is a 3-piece mahogany body, whereas the Standard 60s is a 4-piece mahogany body. That's not going to be the same from guitar to guitar. The good news here is because Epiphone uses veneers, or if it's a solid color, they use that to hide it as well. It means you're not paying for someone to actually sort and grade the wood because it doesn't matter what it looks like because they're using a veneer or a solid color. Both guitars here are also non-weight relieved, so that means before they put the maple top on the mahogany body, the only channels that are there are the routing for the control cavity, the toggle switch, and the like little channel for the pickups and wiring to go to the toggle switch. Weight-wise, there's a little bit of weight to them, but they're not really heavy. Both of the Gibson Standard 50s and Standard 60s that I have are 9.9 pounds. These probably weigh in around 7 or 8, somewhere around that. Both guitars here have mahogany necks. Now, when it comes to neck carves, the neck carves here, the Standard 50s is slightly thicker than the Standard 60s. The Standard 60s has what's called the 60s slim taper, which means it's just a little thicker than like a slim taper you would find on like an SG or so. The neck carve that's on the Standard 50s, they like to call it the 59 medium C, but I have VOS 1959, and whoa, there's a difference. I also have a 64 VOS that has a 59 neck on it. Whoa, there's a difference. There's a little more girth to those. But I can understand why they call it a medium C, because it's slightly thicker than this neck here. Both guitars also have a joint that brings the neck into the body here. The standard 50s has a long tenon neck, a long tenon for the neck, and the standard 60s has a short neck tenon. We also have a scarf joint here where they attach, they keep or put the headstock on and everything. So kind of hard to see, but it's definitely there. Both guitars also have Graphtec nuts. We also have Laurel fretboards here. They're also bound without any fret nibs. And I do have to state, the Laurel that they're sourcing now is very, 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 very different than the Laurel that they used to source, and most guitar companies used to source. A lot of people that I've spoken to who own an Epiphone standard 50s or a 60s in the newer, inspired by Gibson lineup, they always swear that they have a rosewood fretboard. They put rosewood on mine. It's only mine. It's just because the sourcing, or the Laurel that they're sourcing now, looks a lot more like rosewood. So it actually has pores in the wood, and there's a little bit of figuring to it. It doesn't feel totally like it doesn't feel bad to me. But I'm renting these guitars, so you can leave it in the comments, if you don't like the Laurel on the newer ones. Maybe does that kind of deteriorate after a month or so? But it is a much more rosewoodier looking fingerboard. Both also have the pearloid trapezoid inlays. On the front of the headstock, on both of the guitars, you're going to find the inlaid Epiphone logo and the silk-screened Les Paul model logo. Both also come with the 3-screw bell-shape truss rod cover. They both say standard on them. You're going to notice the tuners here is where things get a little different. So with the standard 50s, we have the Epiphone Vintage Deluxe tuners. They're a little lighter and a little thinner than the Gibson, but not by much. They hold their tune rather well as well. And the standard 60s here has Grover Rotomatic tuners. Now, in the 60s, they still use Clouson tuners. They actually switched to double ring Clouson tuners. So just like the Gibson version, it's treated as if it's a hot-rodded Les Paul from that year. So basically one of those things where like a typical upgrade that an owner would have made, so like popping Grovers on here. Now, in the last video I did comparing this to the Gibson version, there were a couple of notes from people saying that the Grovers are different, because I note that these are thinner as well, not as thick as the Gibson version. And they noted that they were probably made in a different facility, with it being thinner and possibly of lesser quality material. But again, so far, both of these holding their tune really, really well. For pickups, the standard 50s has the Epiphone ProBucker 2 in the bridge, the ProBucker 1 in the neck. The standard 60s has the Epiphone ProBucker 3 in the bridge and the Epiphone ProBucker 2 in the neck. All four pickups here are Alnico 2. However, I thought at one point I read that the ProBucker 3 was Alnico 5 or possibly 3. But it was an offhand thing that I read a few years back. Who knows? But from what it's looking like, Alnico 2 are the magnets that are used. When it comes to the pickups, to me, this is where things really start to take off in the differences. Because the standard 60s here, these pickups are very, very bland. They lack a lot of definition and a lot of clarity. And like, it seems like some of the frequencies are kind of like missing. And like the high end sort of blends in together. So a lot of the times when I was doing recordings with it, The top 3 strings here, the thinner strings, they sort of blended together a little too much, so there wasn't a lot of separation in the notes. The standard 50s, these pickups are fantastic. In comparison to the Gibson and even 1958 VOS that I own, they held their own rather well. There's still a lack of clarity and definition, but not nearly as much as the 60s. And to be honest, you can get away with these a lot better and a lot easier than you can with these. Now, part of that could actually be with the way that these are wired and the capacitors that are being used here, if you're using your tone and your volume when it comes to the wiring. So if we take the covers off the control cavities on the back, if you look at the standard 50s here, again, this is 50s wiring, you'll see it has CTS potentiometers. It looks like a rat's nest in here. The potentiometers are soldered, and then the pickups are actually connected via a quick connect. But if I move things around, you can actually see we have some upgraded capacitors in the standard 50s. This is a huge thing, huge addition, and they're very responsive and very reactive as well. And they really lend themselves to the 50s wiring that's in the standard 50s here. The standard 60s has just what I would figure in it if we take the plate off here. So you're going to see, again, we have a rat's nest here. So we have CTS potentiometers. Those are soldered, but the pickups are connected via a quick connect. And if I move things around here, you're still going to see that we have that little red generic capacitors that are in here. There's 2 of them in here. Now, the big thing here is 95% of players don't use their volume and tone. They use them on stun, and they, for some reason, believe that the capacitor actually comes into play. If your tone is set on stun, so 10 all the way max, it's actually closed out of the circuit, so it's not really being used. But if you are someone that uses your volume and your tone, 50s wiring versus modern wiring, so modern wiring on the 60s, wow, will make a huge difference, and let me explain. So on the standard 50s here with the 50s wiring, that's all to do with what lug on the tone is set to ground, and which one has the capacitor going to the volume or output on the volume potentiometer. So basically what ends up happening is, with 50s wiring, if you're turning your volume down, your tone is not affected. So you retain all of that top end in your tone. However, if you start dialing back your tone, it starts to affect the volume of the pickup. So when that happens, it can actually clean things up a little nicer, because your volume is going to be a little lower, even though your volume might not be touched whatsoever. But it will affect the overall volume of your guitar, of the pickup for that pickup that you're selected to, so it can actually clean things up. Modern wiring, like is on the 60s here, what happens is the volume, when you turn it down, it starts to actually darken the tone. So if you've ever set your volume to like 8 and you're starting to think like it sounds a little muddy, that's why. Also, if you're turning down just the tone and not touching the volume, nothing is affected. So one big example here, say you put your volume to, like on the neck pickup or something like that, to 8, and then your tone to 6. This guitar here will still retain some of that the high end, and then your volume is going to be affected, so it's going to start cleaning up the signal, so you'll get like a nice clean-ish tone, even if it's sort of like an overdriven signal that's coming through. I mean, there's still going to be a little bit of drive in there, but it'll start to clean up the overall sound because the tone affects the volume. But on the 60s here, which has the modern wiring, if you did the same thing, so volume at 8, tone at 6, you're still going to get like that overdriven signal, but your tone, now that it's at 6, is going to be even muddier because your volume is set to 8. So it's going to be a darkened, muddier tone. So you'll start to get like that woman type tone that everyone talks about. You know what I mean? Where it's like the tone is almost all the way down. That's kind of what's going to come through because you're going to have that overdriven signal. So basically you're going to hear like not a lot of top end, like basically no top end. It's going to be all low end. So you'll get sort of that woman tone. Both guitars here also have the Epiphone lock tone bridge and the stop bar. They're the same bridge and same stop bar here. I will say, just like I say in all the other videos that have the Epiphone lock tone bridge, the sizing for them is the metric sizing. So the reason I say that is the Epiphone lock tone bridge here immediately came with the saddle for the B buzzing, and then I had to re-intonate because it didn't come intonated. So once I intonated, the low E string started buzzing and has progressively gotten worse. This one here, no issues so far. I've had it for less than a week and no issues so far, and I did have to intonate this as well. However, I think the last one that I thought the same thing, after 3 weeks it just started buzzing like crazy. What it is the screws that they use in the bridge aren't the greatest material, and they start to deteriorate. And what'll end up happening eventually, because of the screws here, you'll be able to just move the saddle with your thumb. That's not good at all for intonation. So the sizing for these are metric. So if you're looking at Tone Pros or if you're looking at any other bridges, make sure you're getting the metric sizing, not the imperial sizing. The metric sizing will work for any of the these type of tunematic bridges that are made overseas. The imperial sizing are for US made guitars only, so the spacing is different. It won't fit on your guitar. And finally, even though this is not an SG video, because people get crazy about this for SGs, the strap buttons are the same. On the Gibsons, the strap buttons are different. From the 50s to the 60s, they're different. Oh, that's about it. So on the Gibsons, there's 4 differences. On the Gibson Custom, technically there's 3 differences. I mean, we can really get into some nerdy stuff, and there's gonna be more, but like fundamentally, there's 3 differences on the custom shops from like a 58 or a 59 to a 60. Knobs is one of them. When it comes to the Epiphone, we got tuners, knobs, neck, short tenon versus long tenon. We have capacitors. We have wiring. And I think that's really the fundamental one. So we've got 6 differences over 4 on the USA models and 3, technically 3, on the Gibson Custom Shop model. So I think I might have to do a video just kind of looking into that, I think. I don't know. I might not. We'll see. But that's really it. So I'm very happy and very thankful that I don't have to have a huge disclaimer saying, please don't get upset. Please don't yell at other people. Please don't make fun of people for what guitars they have and let people enjoy their guitars just because it's Epiphone versus another brand other than Epiphone. Thank you so much for watching.